Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. Can people make positive changes in their lives that really last? Dr. Mark Baker has been trying to answer this question for the past 25 years as a clinical psychologist. To discover the answer, he went on a quest to find people who have changed their lives in the most dramatic ways, ending up in the largest maximum security prison in the United States, located in Angola, Louisiana. Once the most brutal prison in the country, Angola was transformed into the most effective sites for rehabilitation in the United States. He uses stories from inside Angola, along with his decades of experience as a clinical psychologist, to share with readers the amazing human potential for change and personal growth. Drawing on themes of forgiveness, community justice, hope, and spirituality, he shows all of us how to change our lives for the better no matter who we are or what we've done. Dr. Mark Baker has received a PhD in clinical psychology and a master's degree in theology, as well as a certificate in psychodynamic psychotherapy. He serves as the executive director of the Levy Counseling Centers in Pasadena and Santa Monica, California. He is the author of several books, including Jesus, the Greatest Therapist Who Ever Lived, which has more than 2 million copies in print, and he's the author of You Can Change and Embrace God's Acceptance. Dr. Baker joins us on the second Friday of every month in the 12 o'clock p.m. hour. You can find more about him at drmarkbaker.com. Well, I want to welcome in my special friend, Dr. Mark Baker. Mark, so great to see you, my friend.
Very good to see you as always. I always look forward to our conversation.
As do I. There is what I consider to be one of the single greatest mental health sideswipes in modern history. Mm-hmm. And that is the reaction to this global pandemic and the closing of churches. It is statistically and not reported in the mainstream media, an increase in suicides, an increase in prescription anxiety medications, an increase in antidepressives, also a rise, and I will share with you my own experience with isolation and trying to deal with isolation in this. You're in a clinical practice as not only as a psychologist but as a theologian, and you bring that's why you are this featured guest, to embrace this balance that we're trying to strike between the spiritual and the psychological, the soul, the mind, the spirit, the Pauline battle that we all wage. And how do we win? How do we survive? How do we thrive in that? And how do we succumb to that? And how do we begin to navigate all of this? Many of our conversations have started with the topic of shame, which has been an area of expertise for you. I've shared that conversation with other psychologists who have been on the program, and it's been really eye-opening. And you're probably getting a lot more books sold, and maybe even getting some contact from some other people that have been on the show, and saying to them, you got to connect with Mark Baker. You have to. Could you do me a favor and turn your speakers down just a little bit? We're getting a little bit of feedback. In looking at this pandemic and the social response, concurrent with this civil unrest, it seems we've created a perfect storm for anybody with a borderline issue in their life.
Right.
It's being magnified 100-fold. What is it you're seeing in your practice, and how are you able to see the it's almost the train wreck of the psychological and the spiritual
Right.
at full speed,
Right.
and the damage is explosive.
It's you're absolutely right. It's extremely unfortunate that early on in dealing with the pandemic, the medical professionals latched onto this term social distancing. It's sadly a very unhealthy term. Now, I realize their point is that we need to have physical distance in order to try to regulate the transmission of this disease. But it should have been from the beginning a physical distancing that we're trying to accomplish, not social. Social distancing is unhealthy. In a pandemic, physical distancing can help. And I think that all the research is saying that, we need to wear masks, stay 6 feet apart, have ventilation, get outdoors if you can. I mean, all the stuff they've discovered that helps is a physical distancing that it seems to be helpful in us limiting the transmission of the disease. But sadly, the term social distancing is a very toxic term. For us to survive psychologically and spiritually, we must remain connected. That there is no health in social isolation. It's not a healthy way of being. Now, I know some people say, "Oh, when I get out into nature, that's when I feel the best, or that's where I experience God the most, out in nature." And I think psychologically, yes, of course, we can experience God anywhere at any time. We can a personal relationship with a living God is something that can happen anywhere at any time. But those times out away from other people, there's always the memory of connections that we take with us. And so there's a way in which you can stay connected to people and not be in their physical presence. There is no substitute for connection when it comes to health and thriving. We cannot grow without connection, psychologically or spiritually. We're ontologically made that way. So to tell people that they need to isolate is a very dangerous message, psychologically and spiritually. Probably one of the best known marriage counselors today is a woman by the name of Susan Johnson, who's developed emotionally focused therapy, and therapists are studying with her all over the world to learn how to help people in marriage. And Christians would study with her, and they came to her and said, "Hey, what you're saying, these principles are Christian principles." And she was so impressed with the Christians who were therapists who were studying with her that she just released a new book called Created for Connection, that she sees in the Bible the very principles that she has studied and learned psychologically. She's not a Christian herself, but she co-wrote a book with a Christian because she could see that what the church is trying to do, the central message of the church is what she believes facilitating the best approach to psychological health. The message of the church is connection first to God and then to others. And she saw the church as probably the greatest disseminator of psychological health of any organization on the planet, because what we were teaching is love and connection. And so it's a beautiful thing. Her latest book, Created for Connection, where her co-author grabs from scripture and says, this is why this principle is healthy, and that's why this principle is healthy. This is what scripture has to say about it. We are fundamentally, psychologically and spiritually created for connection. And if you tell people, no, you need to put that on the shelf, you need to isolate, stay away from other people, this connection is healthy, it's a very, very dangerous path to go down. And what we are seeing in our clinic, when this whole pandemic thing hit and our governor said, you need to go to telehealth, you can't work with people face to face anymore, which we've done. 95% of what we do is telehealth. We saw a dip in our practice at first. There was people who said, well, that's weird. I don't want to have my session over a TV screen. I'm gonna postpone and wait. But that only lasted a few weeks. And now we're getting calls from all over the state of California of people saying, I need to connect. I need you to help me because this isolation thing is causing me to be depressed, anxious, suicidality has gone up, you're right. Violence in marriage has gone up. violence towards children. Think about it. If you already have an unhealthy family environment, and now these kids can't escape and go to school, which they've been doing. Many of these kids have school has been their escape from a toxic home environment, and they can't do that. They're trapped now 24/7 with parents who are not skilled at parenting and dealing with conflict and dealing with their own anger and alcoholism problems. All those problems have been spiked now because we've just locked these people away in their homes who didn't start off with the skills to know how to deal with all these psychological problems. And it's a pressure cooker now of pathology. And so we're getting calls all day long, every day now, of people reaching out saying, I have two clients that started with me who one lives in San Diego, and he's reaching out to me saying, I need your help. And I know I'm never going to work with you face to face, but please help me because isolating is causing me to have suicidal thoughts. I feel I'm failing as a parent here because my depression is going up. I need help. The effect of isolation on us is toxic psychologically and spiritually. And you're hearing now in the media, professionals are changing the term. They're not saying social distancing as much as they're saying physical distancing. Some people are catching on to that. They're saying, stand 6 feet apart from people in line. We need this physical distancing to decrease the odds of droplets being passed from one person to the other. And it's getting out into the thinking of the general public that physical distancing might be helpful, social distancing is not. We've got to find a way to stay connected to God and each other in order for us to have the spiritual and emotional resources to face this crisis. This is a global crisis, and we need our psychological and spiritual resources to be prepared to deal with it.
When God says it's not good for man to be alone, this is a basic biblical premise that he creates and justifies the helpmate, and then for them to be fruitful and multiply so that no one is virtually alone. You're all part of a greater family. This period of time has curtailed. My usual speaking calendar is 250 speaking engagements a year, on average 3 a week, a pace I've kept up for years. People have tried to encourage me to do it via Zoom, and I can't connect. Someone just shared with me the other day that Keith Green, the musician, a Jewish believer that died young, could not perform in the studio. He had to perform in front of a live audience. He could not record in a studio. He had to perform in front of a live audience. And I found myself that I can't teach. I can't. It's like the mantle has been, and actually called my board and said, I'm going through a thing here where I believe the Lord has taken this mantle from me because I can't do this. They want me to talk to 50 faces on a screen, but unless I'm there to physically interact, unless I'm there to feel the responses to a particular point that I'm making and see the question marks in their minds, or see the affirmation, or go deeper, or know when to pause and make it anecdotal. That's I off the audience.
Yes.
But without that, I'm not teaching. I tried it. I can't do it. It's just talking to a screen. I talk to a screen 3 hours of every day. I talk to a screen. You and I are talking on a screen. Right. But this is for us. It's a video phone call. Is what it's FaceTime. But for me to be in a teaching position, I can't place myself. I can't connect.
Right.
And so because of that, what for me as a single man, I'm finding that families are doing things together as families, and friends are reconnecting with their families because their families are doing more together. But those like myself that are single, there's nowhere to go. There's no place to meet. There's no place to gather. Therefore, I'm kind of isolated. And it was interesting. My mother just celebrated her 94th birthday. And she was out playing golf on her 94th birthday, so she's great. And we were talking, and she said, "You know, she said, I know you don't remember, but do you remember me telling you the story about when you were born? She had scarlet fever when I was delivered." And so she was immediately rushed off to isolation, and I was immediately placed in isolation. So this is 1952. So you don't have incubator wards and stuff like that. I'm like in a broom closet or something. And you know, I guess they came and checked on me periodically, but I don't think that I met my mother for 5 days. So I was in this isolation kind of environment at birth. There was no bond, there was no connection. And actually to this day, we laugh about the fact that when people say, "Are you close?" we say, "Well, we did everything together for 9 months. I don't know how much closer you can be than that." And we joke about it because we know that there was this window, and we never recovered. We never grew close like that. There was never that bond. That's why it was so important for me to be in the delivery room when my daughter was born, and that I be the first one to hold her so that our eyes would meet. That I talked to her in the womb, because I knew what it was like. But I've had that sense again, and I have a dog, and I get out and walk the dog, and you see the neighbors and you wave to the neighbors. But this isolation is now becoming where things like my prolific writing come to a screeching halt. It's interfering with my ability to creatively think. When I think about the fact that what if I got a call and they said, "Hey, we need you to step in and give a sermon." Before I had 50 of them that I could, and I'm thinking, I better clean up my computer and get all my old stuff organized, because I'm going to have to pull something out of the file because I don't feel fresh. Even though I'm spending my time with the Lord, even though I'm spending my time in the Word, even though I have daily conversations like this one, I'm beginning to feel the impact of isolation, and it's becoming palpable. I said to my daughter the other day, "Are there any?" And she lives in Florida, as you know, because we've been writing back and forth about her. I said, "Is there any errand I can run for you?" Because I don't have anybody to run errands for. And she said, "Well, you know, are you looking for something to do?" I said, "Yeah, I'm looking for a purpose." Other than taking care of myself and the dog, doing show prep and reading the books for show prep, I'm actually looking for purpose. That's what this period of isolation and social distancing has how it's impacted me personally, psychologically. And I can't imagine that I am the only person in the world that's had this kind of thought or situation. I may be the only one openly talking about it, but that's what I do for a living, is openly talk about these things.
And actually there are neurological explanations for what you just said. When you go to your board and you say, I something's missing here, I can't do this, I feel like the mantle is taken from me. Uh, Neuroscientists have been looking at what is really the fundamental relational nature of human beings just in the last 10 years. And we've discovered, actually it was in Italy, some researchers in Italy discovered that you and I have in our brains what are called mirror neurons. Uh, and I am hardwired biologically in my brain to look at you. And when we are in each other's presence, I am reading your behavior. I'm reading your intentions. And I don't even know I'm doing that. I have neurons in my brain that are mirroring neurons in your brain. And I don't even know I'm doing that. And it causes us to be in sync. Biologically, we are in sync with each other when we're in each other's presence, reading each other's intentions. And they discovered that if I'm looking at you and we're in each other's presence and you go to pick up your coffee cup and take a drink, I suddenly feel like I need a sip of coffee. And not only that, as you pick up the coffee cup and if you stop, in my brain, I'm still anticipating you're going to go ahead and take a drink of that. I neurologically anticipate where you're going. We are that connected when we're in each other's presence that our brains start firing, triggering each other to fire back and forth in sync with each other. We are created. What's most true about us, we think, biologically, is that we're created for connection. We are relational. We're fundamentally relational beings. And when we're not in each other's presence, and even now with the screen, it limits my mirror neuron's ability to pick up on you, because there's so much body posture I'm missing, tone I'm missing, pheromones I'm not smelling. There's so much data that I'm missing here that it doesn't operate as effectively as when we're in each other's presence. And so what I'm saying is what you're saying, the spiritual truth that you're saying, is supported by actual hard biological science, that we have these mirror neurons that over all the time we've been here on the planet have learned to pick up on each other and read each other and get in sync with each other. And I need you in order to for me to feel good about me, and you need me in order to feel good about you. And when we're in sync with each other, we just know it. I just know where you're going with that thought, and you know where I'm going with my thoughts. And our brains are doing this, and this is thinking, meaning the prefrontal cortex, the language part of the brain, isn't even operating in this process. So I'm reading your intentions, and I think I get a sense of where you're going, and I'm not even thinking about it. It's too fast. The emotional part of the brain is many times faster than the thinking part of the brain. And if then we remove each other from that presence where we're able to get in sync and read each other, we feel something's wrong. You feel it. And so you come to the conclusion that this isn't right. I can't teach. I'm not picking up on the signals of something's missing here. I'm out of sync. And there's hard neurological science to support that, to say that's right. You were created to need relationship and to bounce off of each other in order to feel good and in sync, and this is right, and I think I'm reading you, and I get the sense you're reading me, and you see the look in the other person's eye, and it means something to you as we're talking. We are made this way, created to be fundamentally relational. And this is a really, really important truth that we need to honor during this time of crisis, and not take it lightly. For us to be disconnected from each other is dangerous psychologically. It's actually dangerous. We're not created, we're not hardwired to do well in isolation. So we've got work to do to figure out what's the best way for us to address this spiritual and emotional crisis that is a secondary. It's the side effect of trying to kill this disease. We're actually damaging ourselves spiritually and psychologically. The side effect is, in certain instances, more dangerous than the disease itself.
We've actually moved from a society of detachment where technology, two people sitting across the table, both with their iPhones, literally texting each other rather than having a conversation, or being so distracted that the family unit is all digital. Now we're finding that this has been magnified to the point where we can see how harmful it is. And then there's another component, and that is the need for human touch.
Right.
And when you are single, when you are not in a relationship, when you're not surrounded by family, and there is no human touch, the dog is great, and that's pretty close, but that's not still not the same. The extended period of the removal of human touch, a hug, a hand on hand, and all that we're doing now in this social distancing is don't hug. They're talking about people wearing masks while having sex. I mean, they're taking this to the nth degree of dividing humanity. And if you look at the picture of the Wild Kingdom, it's that picture. If I separate the weak, they're easier to attack and to take out of the equation, because we do have an enemy that wants to see us keep our churches closed, wants to see us destroy fellowship, wants us to see us withdraw from the body of Messiah, is delighted that a third of the churchgoers aren't going to go back.
Right.
20% of the pastors interviewed said that they do not plan to continue in the pastorate after having gone through this pandemic. It was too overwhelming from a business, from a management, from having to furlough people, to dealing with the great decline in tithes and offerings, and trying to be of service and feeding a community or being of value in the community. They couldn't deal with it. They weren't trained that way, and they just felt like, this is not what I'm called for. If this is what the future is going to look like, I'm not prepared to take that on. I thought I was supposed to preach the gospel, and I'm overwhelmed with sanitation and marking seats and putting hand sanitizers and all these other things that they're putting together that are making this more of the business side of it than of the spiritual feeding side. We've been talking with Dr. Mark Baker, author of some incredible books. You Can Change, Overcoming Shame, Let Go of Others' Expectations, Embrace God's Acceptance, and Jesus, the Greatest Therapist Who Ever Lived. And we meet with him on the second Friday of every month at the 12 o'clock hour as we talk about these kind of psychological issues, but in a theological Christian worldview context. So psychology has a place in the believer's life. We have a thought life, we have feelings, we have a soul, we have mind, will, and emotions, and there's things that we struggle with that the Bible brings us great comfort by word, but there is additional work that we need to do in exploring things that become problematic, being transparent, being able to share and to ask for help into how to navigate. And when we return from break, we're going to talk about some of the things that Dr. Baker and his team are employing as ways to help you navigate some of the things that we can manage, some of the things we can address, some new ways of thinking, new ways of living that may improve the situation for you until we can return to some form of normalcy. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to join me and my special featured guests twice per month with Rabbi Zeb Parat and Carl Gallups, and monthly with Dr. Michael Heiser, Dr. Michael Lake, Dr. Timothy Jennings, Dr. Mark Baker, Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, Drs. Michelle and Mark Sherwood, Dr. Kim Moss, Derek Gilbert, Peter Rosenberger, Brandon Gallups, Steve Fair, Stephen Black, and Sean Tabbitt for in-depth insights into Israel, prophecy, the unseen realm, The Brain, Spiritual Warfare, Overcoming Shame, Mysteries of the Bible, Prophetic Insights, The Sensational and the Supernatural, Caregiving, Addiction Recovery, Understanding the Divided Heart, Same-Sex Attraction, and much more. We're proud to feature some of the greatest biblical minds from both Israel and around the United States. Check out our featured guest lineup and 24/7 feed on ignitinganation.com or watch by topic on any device with our free apps. If you can't find what you need, you're just not looking in the right place. Follow us on social media and download our free apps today.
With today's smartphone technology, news, information, sports, and entertainment is widely available and almost unbounded. But what about the information that believers in Yeshua are looking for? Well, now there's an app for that. Igniting a Nation now has apps available for Android and iPhone. With our app, you'll gain access to everything you would in our website, from our featured guests to our live streaming shows. Visit Google Play or the Apple Store and download Igniting a Nation's new app today.
Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to join me and Israel's #1 rated guide, Edo Canaan, for our annual Israel trip. Our 2022 trip is now open for registration for our 18th trip to Israel. Our trip will take us from Tel Aviv to the Galilee, down to the Dead Sea, and 4 nights in Jerusalem. You will walk where Yeshua walked and watch the Bible turn from black and white to living color. Visit ignitinganation.com/events and download the registration form today. No, it's not too early to take advantage of our payment plan designed to fit any budget. All of our trips sell out, and we want you to experience this life-changing journey. Registration is now open for April 2nd to 13th, 2022, and we promise you, you will never read your Bible the same way again. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and as we do on the second Friday of every month at the 12 o'clock hour, we host Dr. Mark Baker as we talk about the psychological and theological issues that confront really all believers. At least some point in their walk, they're going to experience one of these topics that we have discussed, whether it's shame, whether it's sin, whether it is identity, whether it's self-esteem, whether it's trauma, whatever it is, there is this balance we need to find that yes, the Lord is our rock and our Redeemer, but there's times when you need a helping hand to help show you the way. And Dr. Mark Baker has been that friend to me, and I appreciate that so very much, as well as a featured guest on the program. So, Mark, welcome back. I had one more thought before we talk about what thinking, what new things, new thought processes we can embrace, what we can look to the scriptures for, is that I'm also finding in this closure of houses of worship that the accountability quotient has disappeared. Mm-hmm. People are now unaccountable for their sin. Mm-hmm. And by being unaccountable for their sin, they've been able to have free reign. And I think that's part of why 1/3 are saying they're not going to go back, because mm-hmm. they kind of like this freedom where they can go out and do what they want and nobody's going to hold them accountable for it. And right. That's that lawlessness and that foretelling of the prophetic that tells us about the days of Noah and the days of Lot, is that no one was paying attention to what was going on. They were just living the big life, and that people are getting a little flavor of that in the last 6 months, where mm-hmm. there's been nobody to give them a message on Sunday that was jerking a knot in them and stepping on their toes and having their wife poke them in the ribs and having that uncomfortable conversation in the ride to lunch. Yep. All that's gone away. And right. I think people are delighting in that, and it's feeding their avarice, and they like it.
They do. All discipline for the moment is unpleasant, right? So none of us really like it, and yet it's good for us. And I think that's exactly right. You know, it's interesting that you bring this up. In my counseling center, here in Pasadena, we have a monthly meeting where all of us come together. I've got 40 therapists. And now we're doing it on Zoom, right? We come together, we call it our pulse. We take our own pulse, where we as a community of therapists try to walk our own talk. We're not just people who are telling other people how they should live their lives. We need to confess to each other, how are we doing? Let's take our pulse as human beings in the practice of psychotherapy, and we just share with each other, how you doing? What's going on? What's our struggle? And in this last pulse, which was just 2 days ago for us, the person who was leading, and we rotate leadership, person leading and saying, so how are you coping with this pandemic? It's been 5 months now. How are you as a human being? How are you, Mark, dealing with this? Let's share and talk about this. And what is God teaching you in this? And people were opening up, and I had a moment of reflection there where I had to look at myself, and I got out my iPad and I looked at all of these new TV shows that I watched. Now, prior to this pandemic, I almost never watched TV. I didn't have time. People would refer to the latest television show. I wouldn't know what they're talking about. And what I've found myself doing is gravitating towards just mindless entertainment and watching the next TV show. And I kind of didn't even realize I was doing that. I don't have to commute back and forth to work. I picked up an extra hour in my day, and I was gravitating towards this, what I said felt like an addiction, and I didn't even know that. And to just be able to confess that to my fellow therapists and say, you know, I don't think I've been managing my time well. And I think what God is saying to me in this is, hey, Mark, you're a man, and you need accountability, and you need to confess if you're moving off in directions of addiction, because you're not above anybody else. You're not superior psychologically to anyone else. If you cut yourself off from the community of accountability, you're going to drift just like anybody else is going to drift into behaviors that are not necessarily healthy. They're just self-gratifying, you know. And it was very helpful for me, even though I don't know if anybody else got much out of it. For me, it was like, wow, I wasn't even aware of that. And the accountability of saying, how are you doing? What's going on for you personally? And what can we confess to each other that we can pray for each other about is so important for us as wounded healers of others as it is for anyone else. That accountability piece is important. It was a little bit embarrassing for me to say that I now know what Tubi TV is. I didn't even know that existed. It's like Amazon Prime and Hulu and Vudu and those places that I didn't even have on my iPad 5 months ago, and now I'm watching sitcoms and stuff, and wondering if really is that the best use of my time. And that accountability helped me self-reflect on that. And if that's happening for us, you know it's happening for everyone else. This time is a time where we need that kind of checking in with each other. Hey, how are you doing? What do you feel good about? What do you not feel good about? And another thought, I had this when you were talking about your birth and your infancy. We discovered in World War II accidentally that women who gave birth to their babies and then were with them for the first 2 or 3 months of their life, but then had to go back into the factories and go back to building planes and bombs again and couldn't be with their children. There was a moment of bonding that came first, but it was only like 10, 12 weeks, and then they were separated. The children were all then kept in nurseries while the moms were gone and away from them. It created what they called anaclitic depression, that the child had a sense of bonding and then it was taken away. Mm-hmm. And so I know what it's like, and now it's gone. So they had the awareness that something's missing, and that creates a different kind of depression. When you had bonding and then now deprived of bonding, there's a depression they called anaclitic depression. Of course, this is an experiment we never would have done in real life. You're not going to take babies away from their moms on purpose. So we had an opportunity just by life circumstances to learn about a different kind of depression that I believe people are experiencing now. We had these bonding. I remember going to church and hugging my friends and seeing the guys that I'm in small group with, and now that's gone. that's taken away from me. There's a certain kind of anaclitic depression that I think everyone is feeling now, because I know what it's like to be connected, and now it's missing. Anaclitic, I can't lean on is what it means. I was leaning on before, and now I can't lean on now. And that creates a certain kind of depression that is also very toxic. And I think people are dealing with that and they don't even know it. I was leaning on these people, and now I can't lean on these people. Something's very wrong. And it creates this sadness that goes deeper in the heart than other forms of sadness. We need to be aware that we're in a psychological and spiritual crisis now.
So the excuse me, the move to binge watching. This is something that I think that the industry has used to their advantage and made a great deal of money on marketing campaigns. Families are finding ways to do things that they hadn't done before. When you come across a client that is describing this COVID isolation syndrome, if you will, what's some of the counsel that you give from both a scriptural and a personal? What can somebody do that is isolated, that is does live alone? And a lot of people do live alone. We have more singles now that I think that maybe more singles than married if we look at the numbers.
Right. We're telling people to reach out and connect to those people that they haven't talked to in a while. See this as an opportunity. Here's a time, you know the people that you're in sort of regular communication with, but you've got a list of people, and we all do have a list of people that you haven't talked to for a while. People that you know, if you did talk to them, you'd pick up right where you left off. You just haven't done it. Sometimes it's been years since you've talked to people that you know, you love, and you've just kind of drifted apart. We're saying you have time now to reach out to those people. Make a list of those people that you haven't talked to for a while and reach out to them and rekindle that sense of connection that we all need. You need that now more than ever, because you don't have the friend you can give a hug to, the guy you can give a handshake with, you go out to lunch with that person you used to go out to lunch with. You can't do that anymore. So you need to fill in the gap with reaching out with virtual connections, Facebook connections, whatever technology you've got to reach out to people you haven't talked to for a while. And you'll find it extremely meaningful. Yeah, that's right. I haven't talked to that guy in 3 years. And the people on the receiving end need that as much as you need it. So what we're telling people is capitalize on this unique time in history where you're isolated and you need to reconnect with people. And you know you've got a list of people out there that you haven't talked to for a while, and they're waiting to hear from you. I've reconnected with people that I knew in high school, and I haven't talked to them in decades. And it's been extremely meaningful. Where you're at in your life now, we've drifted apart, and I'm just calling to say hello. We're focusing on, what we're teaching people is we're focusing on emotional communication. And when you reach out to talk to someone, don't just talk about the circumstances. Talk about the circumstances and how you feel. That's what creates the sense of connection. It's not just, oh yeah, I remember when we did this or did that. It's like, oh yeah, I remember when we did this. And you know, I was really sad that happened. Or, you know, that really made me angry. Or, you know, I felt hurt. We're telling them to include the emotional language when you reach out to connect, because that creates the sense of bonding. Don't just recount facts. Also recount feelings. And when someone shares a feeling with you, it's really important for you to share how you feel about that feeling. Mm-hmm. That's what people are looking for, is a response, an emotional response to an emotion. And often we think people are looking for our advice. They're not. What they're looking is for your validation. So you don't have to agree with them politically. You don't have to agree with the choices that we're making, that they're making. But what you do need to do is validate that you can understand why they feel that way, even if you don't. People are looking for an emotional validation, much more so than advice. We were all in our heads thinking, that's what's people really need is for me to tell them what to do. They don't. But what they do need is to know that how you feel about how they feel. That creates that sense of bonding and connection, and that's way more valuable than any advice you could give them. People will say to me, well, I don't know, I'm not going to call him because I have no idea what I'm going to say to him. My response is, doesn't matter. Tell him however you feel about whatever it is he's saying, and you're going to create a sense of bonding. That sense of connection doesn't come from your brilliance. It comes from your human responsiveness, heart to heart. That's what creates connection. So that's what we're telling people to do, because we need it now more than ever. So we've got to take special steps now to fill in what's missing, reconnect with people, and focus on how you feel about how they feel. That's in a nutshell what we're teaching them to do.
I wonder how psychologically universally healthy it would be if we seize this as an opportunity to invoke our ministry of reconciliation. That in our time as we're contemplating, we have time to think, and as Jesus says, if you bring your gift to the altar and thereby realize your brother has something against you, leave your gift and go be reconciled to your brother.
Right.
That if we took inventory of that which has remained unreconciled and use this as an opportunity for connection, but with reconciliation in mind, that this be a time of healing, then I could almost see it as God's way of giving me a therapeutic window of opportunity to exercise what Paul describes in 2 Corinthians 5:17 through 6:10, this ministry of reconciliation that I've been called into. That are there people in my life, whether or not family, friends, old acquaintances, former employees, former managers, other associates, that maybe I need to touch base with, and it may not be for the purpose of clearing the air, but just reconnecting and just saying, I was thinking of you. And
yes.
If the issue comes up and say, well, why would you think of me? You were such an SOB the last time I was with you. You're exactly right, and that's why I'm calling, is to tell you that it was on my heart to tell you that when I reflect on that time, I don't reflect on it well, and I'm sorry for that, and I hope that you will forgive me. I'm not that person anymore. And that gift that maybe God is giving us of an opportunity where we're not so busy, and embrace it as believers, that if we take that Romans 8:28, that all things work together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Maybe there is a message hidden here, psychological healthy, spiritually certainly healthy, right standing before God healthy, and personally rewarding. And it would take, certainly it takes a certain amount of chutzpah, a certain amount of internal strength to pick up the phone and dial that number, or reach out even on social media and try to connect, to try to repair some of that may be a benefit that we can drive people to derive in this time that would be healthy.
I think that is extremely wise counsel. I think this is an opportunity to finish unfinished business with people. And exactly like you just said, it's on your heart that there's a rupture. And reconciliation is different than forgiveness. You can forgive someone and never let them know. They're not a part of it. Reconciliation requires a conversation. It requires a mutual understanding of pain. And it requires change of mind, metanoia. In order for me to reconcile, I need to call you and say, you know what, I was seeing it this way, and now I'm seeing it this way, and I wanted to share that with you. And I believe I've hurt you, and I'm so sorry. And I wanted to have a conversation to try to understand the pain I've caused. God's leading me to try to repair that. And if you've got the courage to have that conversation, this could be a gift from God during this crisis for you to reconcile a rupture. But it would take great courage and humility to make that phone call. But the benefits for you, whoever it is that has a reconciliation that's not yet done, are huge, to heal those resentments and to take that weight off of your heart. It would be the healthiest thing you could do, is to make that conversation, to confess that there's pain there that has not been mutually understood. We haven't had that conversation where I could understand how I've hurt you and you understand how I feel, and the communication of that change of mind, that metanoia, that means I saw it this way, but I'm seeing it differently now, and I needed to share that with you, could be hugely psychologically and spiritually beneficial to anyone who had the courage to make that call. I think it's wise, extremely wise counsel.
Well, I think that's where we're going to wrap it up for our show today. We've been talking with Dr. Mark Baker, as we do on the second Friday of every month at the 12 o'clock hour. You can get his books. Just click on the link on our website, ignitingnation.com, or visit him at drmarkbaker.com and avail yourself of his services, especially in this environment of telehealth. He has been a tremendous blessing to me as a personal counselor to me in a couple of situations, and so I can give personal testimony to the compassion of a loving father, of a loving minister, of a man of God, and a very gifted therapist. And so I can only tell you that I am humbled and honored to call you my friend and safe person. So thank you.
It's my honor to be your friend. Absolutely.
Thank you. God bless you, my friend. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.